Technology and the internet have advanced exponentially in the last 3 decades and have become an integral part of our lives. As the new communication systems and digital technology were making dramatic changes in the way we live and transact our day-to-day business, including increased use of computers, portable and other electronic devices to create, transmit and store information in electronic and digitized forms instead of traditional paper documents, a need was felt to have a formal legal framework in place to validate and regulate these technological and digital changes. The Information Technology Act 2000 was passed by the Parliament to provide legal recognition for transactions carried out through electronic data interchange and other means of electronic communication, generally referred to as electronic or e-commerce, to facilitate electronic filing of documents with the government agencies, and further to amend the Indian Penal Code, the Indian Evidence Act 1872, the Bankers' Books Evidence Act 1891 and the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 and other connected matters.
As our nation celebrates its journey of 75 years of independence, Sansad TV takes a unique initiative by honoring that journey through a program series titled 75 Years, Laws That Shaped India. An exclusive talk show discussing and acclaiming different laws that have been introduced and adopted during these golden years. I'm your host Hemant Batra, back with another episode in that series. Today our focus will be on the Information Technology Act 2000, in short, the IT Act. A landmark law which for the first time provided specific authority to the government agencies to act in respect of internet and technology-based crimes. To talk about this landmark legislation, we have with us a very eminent panel of law experts. We have with us Senior Advocate Mahesh Jethmalani, joining virtually. He is currently also a nominated Member of Parliament in the Rajya Sabha. Thank you, Mahesh, for joining us. We also have amongst us Senior Lawyer Dr. Pavan Duggal, one of the top cyber lawyers across the globe. Welcome, Pavan, to Sansad TV studios.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here.
So let us begin our discussion. Mahesh, let me come to you first. The IT Act can, Mahesh, very well be labeled as a flagship initiative, or if I may say so, a flagship e-governance initiative of the Parliament of India and the Government of India. How would you like to describe the significance of this particular statute?
Well, in one sentence, I would say that it was a burning necessity of a law to keep pace with fast evolving technology. Actually, it was the United Nations, as you know, which had passed a model law, the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law. And they had passed this law as a model law, which they wanted all member nations, for the sake of conformity, to pass in their own countries so that there be uniformity. So as a responsible member, of course, we immediately took up the cudgels and this act was passed. And it's a very, comprehensive act in every sense. It has, provisions for data protection to some extent. It has provisions for recognition of, digital transactions, including banking transactions. It has, regulation of intermediaries, and it has prescribed certain crimes as well. So, it's a extremely comprehensive statute and one that was passed both to comply with our international obligations as a responsible member state of the Committee of Nations and the United Nations, and also to update us legally with technology.
Right.
So in that sense, it is a pioneer law, a trendsetter law, in some words. Pavan, the Information Technology Act is born out of a model law on electronic commerce, which was passed or adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations in 1997, if I correctly remember that year. How would you like to tell our viewers or share your views with our viewers with regard to the backdrop of this UN resolution as well as the model law?
Well, the electronic format had been with us for some time, but clearly nobody had seen the internet coming in the force that it came with the coming of the World Wide Web in the early 90s. Internet was born in 1969 in the form of ARPANET, but then its success was primarily limited to academia and universities. But the way the World Wide Web came across, it completely changed the manner how you would access the internet. और एक बार ये वर्ल्ड वाइड वेब आ गया तो वो इतना आसान उसने बना दिया आपको इंटरनेट को एक्सेस करना, विभिन्न प्रकार की वेबसाइट्स को जाना। साथ ही साथ हमने देखना शुरू किया कि बहुत सारी गतिविधियां होनी शुरू हो गई जो लोगों को टारगेट करने लग गए। साइबर क्राइम बहुत बढ़ गया, यहाँ तक कि डोमेन नेम्स को लेकर बहुत सारे इश्यूज आने लग गए। So somewhere down it was felt that we must have a legal framework.
Right.
So the state of Utah became the first state in the United States and in the world to come up with a cyber law in the year 1996. By the time UNCITRAL, being the body of the United Nations, was working on this model law on electronic commerce, which got ratified and approved by the General Assembly on 30th of January 1997. Now that was the starting point. एक बार ये ratification हुई तो लगभग तमाम सारे राष्ट्रों को एक इशारा मिल गया कि आइए, उन्हें प्रोत्साहन मिला कि आप भी अपने राष्ट्रीय कानून बनाइए जो इन UN मॉडल लॉ के विभिन्न प्रावधानों पर आधारित
And India was signatory to that.
India was definitely an important part of it. So we began a very unique journey. हमारा ये हुआ कि दो विभिन्न प्रकार के मंत्रालयों ने एक साथ काम करना शुरू कर दिया और फिर कुछ देर बाद हम लोगों ने डिसाइड किया कि साहब हमें यूनिफॉर्मिटी की आवश्यकता है and that's why we came up with the IT bill 1999 which was tabled in parliament in December 99.
Right.
पार्लियामेंट के सामने जैसे ही बिल आया, पार्लियामेंट ने कहा बहुत ज्यादा कॉम्प्लिकेटेड बिल है तो चलिए इसको पार्लियामेंट्री स्टैंडिंग कमेटी के यहाँ भेजते हैं। The Parliament Standing Committee did a lot of work and suggested various new amendments in their report, which finally got carried out. And finally, we got the Information Technology Act 2000 in the current form in the year 17th of May 2000, when finally got implemented on 17th of October 2000. जब हमने शुरू किया था, तो सब लोगों को लगता था कि साइबर लॉ छोटा सा एक कानून है, ई-कॉमर्स को बढ़ावा देने का कानून है। किसी को मालूम नहीं था कि 20 साल 22 साल बाद ये कानून इतना ज्यादा प्रचंड रूप ले पाएगा कि ये भारत के सबसे 3 महत्वपूर्ण कानूनों में एक हो जाने वाला है। क्यों? क्योंकि आज भारतवर्ष में अगर आप कुछ भी चीज इलेक्ट्रॉनिक माध्यम से करते हैं, चाहे वो कंप्यूटर्स, कंप्यूटर सिस्टम्स, कंप्यूटर नेटवर्क्स या इलेक्ट्रॉनिक डेटा का इस्तेमाल करते हैं, तो उसमें आपकी विभिन्न प्रकार की गतिविधियां आईटी एक्ट में कवर हो जाती हैं।
बिल्कुल। तो ये बेसिकली ये जो कानून है, हम कह सकते हैं कि मॉडल लॉ जो यूएन का था, जो UNCITRAL का था, जिसको अडॉप्ट किया यूएन जनरल असेंबली ने 1997 में जनवरी में, उस मॉडल लॉ ने इंस्पायर किया हमारे पार्लियामेंटेरियंस को, बट हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि वो रेप्लिका है, क्योंकि स्टैंडिंग कमेटी में रेफर हुआ तो कुछ ना कुछ सजेशंस उनके भी थे और वो इनकॉर्पोरेट हुए होंगे एक्ट में।
देखिए, संसद का और सांसदों का एक बहुत महत्वपूर्ण रोल रहा है इस कानून को इवॉल्व करने में, उसको कस्टमाइज करने में। एक तो होता था कि चलिए हम कट एंड पेस्ट कर लें एंड यू एग्जैक्टली incorporate whatever the provisions of the UNCITRAL model law. But the standing committee said, look, we are in a country like India, which has got its own unique kind of ground realities. और जब तक आप भारत को मद्देनजर रखते हुए कुछ विशिष्ट कानूनी प्रावधान नहीं लेकर आएंगे, तब तक ये कानून बहुत ज्यादा तारसंगत नहीं होने वाला वर्तमान रियलिटी के साथ। And that's the reason why the parliamentarians of the country, through the Parliamentary Standing Committee, actually took a yeoman step. They actually recommended that let's put a dedicated chapter on cyber crimes, which ultimately came to be known as Chapter 11 of the IT Act.
Mahesh, reverting to you once again, this act has had multi-dimensional effect on even other key statutes. For instance, it triggered changes and amendments in the Indian Penal Code, the Evidence Act, Bankers Book Evidence Act, the Reserve Bank of India Act, and perhaps few more. Can you please tell our viewers what were those key amendments which were brought about in these key statutes?
You see,
Maybe
Pani,
some few key amendments.
since IT pervades, the electronic medium started pervading every aspect of life. You had to make corresponding changes in existing statutes,
Correct.
which dealt with documentation, for instance.
Right.
To a large extent, electronic transactions replaced documentary transactions. So most of the changes came in those statutes which dealt with, particularly commercial statutes. So
Right.
the Reserve Bank of India Act had to be amended because electronic transfer of funds, digital transfer of funds, was now a part of this huge technological revolution.
Absolutely.
So the RBI Act had to be amended so that the RBI could oversee these transactions as well. So an amendment had to be made to the Reserve Bank of India Act. Then the Evidence Act in India. All offenses dealing with documents had to be now amended so that the word document included electronic records.
Right.
Penal statute followed step. So the Indian Penal Code had to be amended. The Evidence Act had to be amended. Evidence Act now included evidence to be produced in court in the form of electronic data.
Right.
Then the Evidence Act also had to be amended as to how these documents would be proved, the mode of proving electronic documents. So you had to have somebody certifying so that the actual server on which documents were stored did not have to be produced in court. Right. You had to bring in a procedure by which secondary evidence of data stored in computers and computer networks was allowed to be produced in court. And that was done through the procedure of 65B, which has now become an extremely familiar provision. Right. Somebody had to certify that it was produced from a computer record of which he was in charge and there was no tampering. Then you had to have, there were offenses concerned with cyber crimes. I mean, there were forgeries. Digital signatures had been recognized. So you had to bring the law of forgery under the Indian Penal Code into line with, the new form of digital transactions. Right. The IT Act recognized digital signatures. So the Forgery Act 464, making a false document, now had to include electronic records. So affixing electronic signatures fraudulently, somebody else's electronic signature to be affixed, had to become an offense. So that was included in 464, not just making a false document, but making a false electronic record, including an electronic signature.
एक और चीज महेश, मैं आपको इंटरजेक्ट कर रहा हूँ, सॉरी. एक और सवाल मेरे मन में इस वक्त उमड़ रहा है, क्योंकि बहुत लोग ये जानना चाहेंगे, क्योंकि काफ़ी कन्फ्यूजन है ये जो सवाल मैं अभी आपसे पूछने जा रहा हूँ. ये जो टेक्स्ट मैसेजेस होते हैं या ये जो व्हाट्सएप मैसेजेस होते हैं, क्या इनकी एविडेंशियरी वैल्यू है in terms of Information Technology Act या IPC या Evidence Act के तहत?
Well, there's one judgment which I believe is erroneous. I mean, मेरे विचार में तो वो तो गलत judgment है. लेकिन WhatsApps are certainly admissible so long as if tape recorded evidence is admissible, I don't see why WhatsApp, which is a textual form of tape recording conversations, right? Is not admissible. It should be admissible so long as the maker of the WhatsApp or the sender of the WhatsApp comes to court and says, हाँ, this text message मैंने ही भेजा था, अपने फोन से भेजा, मेरा फोन नंबर ये है, और मैंने मेरे फोन से इस नंबर पे ये text message भेजा था. So you have to give oral evidence to corroborate the textual message.
Well, the Information Technology Act is an ambitious statute that provides legitimacy to electronic transactions as well. It would be worthwhile to get a glimpse of its initial parliamentary journey.
The Information Technology Bill 1999 was introduced in the Lok Sabha on 16 December 1999 by the then Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Minister of Information Technology, Shri Pramod Mahajan. It was then referred to the Standing Committee on Science and Technology on the 14th January year 2000. The The bill was debated and passed by the Lok Sabha on 16th of May year 2000 and Rajya Sabha on 17th of May year 2000. It received the assent of the President on 9th of June year 2000. The Information Technology Act came into effect on 17th of October year 2000, via notification of the same date in the Official Gazette of India. Let us glance through the glimpses of some of the debates which took place in the Parliament at the time of passing of this law.
श्री प्रमोद महाजन माननीय मंत्री.
Sir, I beg to move for leave to introduce the Information Technology Bill 1999.
IT to the masses. We have to take IT from south to north. We have to take IT from west to east. We have to take IT from cities to villages. We have to take IT from English language to Indian languages. We have to take IT in health. We have to take IT in education. We have to take IT in governance.
Government has not given clear guidelines as to the way in which how the permission can be obtained for stronger encryption.
This bill prescribes setting up a cyber regulation appellate tribunal to try computer-related crimes and violation of IT Act. The accused need not go to the civil court for claiming.
आम जनता को इससे अभी कुछ नहीं मिलने वाला है, केवल इससे फायदा होगा जो बहुराष्ट्रीय कंपनियों को जो इंटरनेट के जरिए विदेश से अपना कारोबार हमारे देश में करेंगी.
ये कहना बिल्कुल गलत है कि भारत देश ने अभी सूचना प्रौद्योगिकी उस मामले में एक महाशक्ति बन करके उभरा है या बहुत बड़ा बहुत अच्छा काम हो रहा है इस विधेयक को ले करके. मैं इससे सहमत नहीं हूँ. अभी भारतवर्ष की 99% से ज़्यादा आबादी जो है कंप्यूटर के बारे में कुछ जानती ही नहीं है.
This information technology is going ahead so much that we will need to come out with amendments also.
Sir, I move that the bill as amended be passed.
The question is that the bill as amended be passed. Those in favor may say aye. Those against may say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. The motion is adopted and the bill as amended is passed.
Let's continue with our discussions. Pavan, what are these electronic and digital signatures under the law, and under what circumstances can they be used, and can they be revoked, withdrawn, or suspended?
In the physical world, we use our own signatures. But that signatures, if you start using in the electronic ecosystem, becomes very easy prey for potential tampering. So somewhere down the line, the need was felt that you must have in place legal frameworks which can support electronic authentication. तभी लिए भारत के सूचना प्रौद्योगिकी कानून ने धारा 3 के अंतर्गत ये कहा कि आप विशिष्ट प्रकार से डिजिटल सिग्नेचर्स का इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, और ये कहा कि अगर आप भारतवर्ष में इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ऑथेंटिकेशन करना चाहते हैं तो कानून मान लेगा कि आपने इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ऑथेंटिकेशन सही करी है अगर आप डिजिटल सिग्नेचर से अपने हस्ताक्षर करेंगे. So in a nutshell, Section 5 of the Information Technology Act 2000 was crucial because it granted legal recognition to these electronic signatures. Earlier, in the year 2000, we were only talking about digital signatures. Right. But by virtue of the amendments in the year 2008, we expanded the scope of these these digital signatures to come under the broader umbrella of electronic signatures. Right. अब आम आदमी की भाषा में बोलें तो आज अगर आपने इनकम टैक्स फाइल करना है और आपका एक पर्टिकुलर लेवल के ऊपर है, तो अगर इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली फाइल करना है तो उसके लिए आपको एक डिजिटल सिग्नेचर की जरूरत है. कौन देता है डिजिटल सिग्नेचर? भारत की जो कंट्रोलर ऑफ सर्टिफाइंग अथॉरिटीज है वो विभिन्न प्रकार के सर्टिफाइंग अथॉरिटीज को लाइसेंस प्रदान करते हैं, और वो लाइसेंस सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स हमें ये सर्टिफिकेट देते हैं जिसका हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं. इट्स बिकम वेरी प्रेवलेंट and today that represents the bridge between the present and the future.
Well, at this moment, we will be slipping into a very short break. Please stay with us as we'll be back soon. Welcome back after the break. You're watching our special show on 75 years of legislative journey. Today we are discussing the Information Technology Act 2000. Let us now view and listen in to another important facet connected with the IT Act.
When the Information Technology Act was passed in the year 2000, it did not include a separate data protection mechanism within its framework. Hence, in 2011, the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology notified the Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices and Procedures and Sensitive Personal Data or Information Rules 2011. Rule 3 specified the list of sensitive personal data, which included information relating to passwords, credit or debit cards, information, biometric information, etc. In 2021, these rules were superseded by the Information Technology Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021. For the first time, the rules obligate even on the intermediaries, which were mostly exempted under the IT Act. The rules place a legal obligation on the social media intermediaries to provide a grievance redressal mechanism for resolving complaints from users or victims. A 3-tier grievance redressal mechanism with varying levels of self-regulation is prescribed for publishers.
First, let me ask Mahesh another very significant question. Mahesh, like any other law or statute, the Information Technology Act has had its own challenges with regard to judicial review. In 2015, its Section 66A was declared as invalid, unconstitutional in the case of Shreya Singhal versus Union of India by the Supreme Court. Can you tell our viewers about the content of Section 66A and how did Supreme Court conclude it to be violative of our Constitution?
The language of 66A was extremely wide. For instance, the language used was anything that was offensive or grossly offensive was the exact phrase that was used. Or, it caused annoyance, right? All these factors were, these kind of words, these kind of adjectives or nouns were, part of the section which rendered it an offense. So if you did, if you posted annoying, the word was annoying, or offensive, grossly offensive words, then the act came into force and those were prohibited and could be punished as offenses. 66A was an offense. The Supreme Court held that this was extremely loose wording. You can't have such wide words. And he said these words were vague. Freedom of speech can only be prohibited on well-recognized grounds set out in Article 19(2) of the Constitution, which is security of the state, which is friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency, morality. These are well-recognized grounds on which you can prohibit. On that ground, it was struck down as being violative of Article 19. यानी कि 66A, Article 19, Constitution का धारा 90, Article 19(1)A का उल्लंघन करता है। ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट का
इस बिना पे उन्होंने इसको invalid declare किया. Pavan, there is a whole scheme, regime and treatment of offenses and penalties under the Act. Can you please share with us what are these offenses and penalties and are they compoundable or they're not compoundable?
Well, the parliamentarians and the Parliament of India was very, very sensitive to the fact that Indians could potentially become victims of cybercrime. And that's why the Parliamentary Standing Committee specifically recommended to the government that please insert a separate section, a separate chapter on cyber crimes, which was earlier not there. लेकिन जब हमने ये धारा 65 से लेकर 78 तक हमने sections डाले इस chapter Roman 11 में, तो हमने एक नया प्रकार का परिवेश स्थापित किया. वो ये है कि अब ये section इन chapter में विभिन्न प्रकार के acts को अब cyber crimes बना दिया गया है. Now these cyber crimes were very important because they were being supplemented apart from amending the the Indian Penal Code.
ठीक है.
क्योंकि भारतीय दंड संहिता के प्रावधानों को भी भारत के आईटी एक्ट ने संशोधित किया था और विभिन्न प्रकार के जो एक्चुअल वर्ल्ड ऑफेंसेस थे उसको इलेक्ट्रॉनिक माध्यम के साथ जोड़ दिया था. तो होता था कि बस अगर आपने कोई भी मुकदमा दर्ज करना है, आईटी एक्ट भी कर सकते हैं, आईपीसी भी कर सकते हैं,
हाँ।
दोनों को जोड़ सकते हैं। तो जो संशोधन 2008 में हुए, उन्होंने नए नए प्रकार के साइबर क्राइम्स इंट्रोड्यूस कर दिए, परिभाषित कर दिए कानून में। सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात यह है कि उन्होंने धारा 66 को पूरी तरीके से बदल दिया, और जो पहले केवल हैकिंग को मानता था, अब उसको नाम कर दिया गया कंप्यूटर रिलेटेड ऑफेंसेस, और इसको इतना विशाल कर दिया गया कि अगर आप कोई भी गतिविधि करेंगे जिसका तात्पर्य, जिसका इफेक्ट होगा कि आप वैल्यू को डिमिनिश करेंगे या यूटिलिटी को खत्म करेंगे, तो आप दंडनीय अपराध कर देंगे, कंप्यूटर रिलेटेड ऑफेंस। सो अ मैसिव, shall I say, step forward. That's what the Parliament took by virtue of these amendments in 2008.
ठीक है. It's time now to take the viewer's question. This time the question has come from, let's see who, Dr. Pooja Sharma from Jammu.
Do you think that there is any need for amending or modifying this act, keeping in view that the COVID pandemic has majorly transformed our personal and professional lives by introducing virtuality, technology and artificial intelligence in a foremost way?
महेश, I think अगर आप इस सवाल का जवाब दें तो अच्छा रहेगा.
I think that there is certainly a need for particularly protection. I mean, that bill is now, the Personal Data Protection Bill is now before a joint select committee of Parliament. So I don't want to go too much into that area because that's being considered, and hopefully it will be enacted into law. So protection of personal data, that's an area which needs to be strengthened. Secondly, we have to strengthen the fight against cybercrime with more. In this respect, intermediaries have to be brought to task. I mean, the intermediaries are not doing enough. The content on television, on social media, has to be controlled, and intermediaries have to react much more quickly than they've been doing so far.
Right.
So I think intermediaries are that law is also coming into force. And the other thing is, what I have noticed during the pandemic, since the question was in the light of the pandemic, is
Right.
that journalists have been taken to book because of their content on their websites, respective web portals, on social media. What has been happening is not only have false cases been filed to terrorize journalists and put a chilling effect again, but also there's a very, very condemnable action on the part of the police. The police are now asking journalists on their own, which is not provided, and they have no power to do this. Is asking journalists to delete. They call them to the police station and say that if you don't delete this content, which we find, people have actually succumbed to the police pressure and deleted content on the illegal demands and threats of the police. This needs to be checked. Abuse of police powers, so far as crimes under the IT Act are concerned, needs to be seriously checked, and errant police officers should be brought to book. A provision as to what penal sanctions there should be for police abusing their power in this respect, particularly the power of arrest and compulsion of the deletion of tweets.
Well, the Information Technology Act 2000 has proved to be a significant legislation. It enabled businesses to effectively manage their activities using technology. It also tagged cyber offenses and enabled the government to now regulate the use and misuse of the ever-expanding area of technology. On that note, we conclude this episode. Thank you so much, Mahesh Jethmalani and Pavan Duggal, for sharing your expert views and giving detailed insight about the statute. That's all for today. Please send your feedback at sansad.tv@sansad.nic.in. You can also download our mobile app, Sansad TV, and also connect with us on various other social media platforms. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and namaskar.